My name is Tara Reed, 34 years old, a fashion designer with a small boutique in Louisville, Kentucky. I've spent years building my brand, pouring my heart into sustainable designs, hoping one day my parents would see my worth. But nothing prepared me for that Sunday family dinner. It was supposed to be our usual monthly gathering, good food, small talk, maybe a few laughs. I walked in with a bottle of my dad's favorite wine, thinking I'd finally get a nod of approval. Then, out of nowhere, my parents dropped a bombshell. "The $200,000 we gave you, what did you do with it?" my dad asked. His voice, sharp eyes locked on me. I froze my fork halfway to my mouth. $200,000. What do you mean? I managed to choke out, my heart pounding. My brother, sitting across the table, went pale, his hands gripping his glass so tight I thought it'd shatter. My mom's face was unreadable, but she didn't back me up. The air felt thick, like the room was closing in. I tried to laugh it off, thinking it was a mistake, but my dad slid a bank statement across the table. It had my name on it, or something close. I felt my stomach drop. What was going on? Why was my brother avoiding my eyes? I had no idea that night would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. Stick around, this gets messy. If you've ever had a family moment that turned your world upside down, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. To understand why that question shook me to my core, you need to know about my family. I'm Tara Reed, raised in a Louisville suburb where my brother Derek and I were inseparable as kids. We'd spend sunny afternoons playing hide-and-seek in the backyard, giggling as we ducked behind trees or squeezed into tight corners. Derek, 2 years my senior, was my protector, always taking the blame when I broke Mom's favorite plate or spilled juice on the couch. Those carefree days made me believe our bond would last forever, that we'd always be there for each other. My father, Harold Reed, 65, started with a single roadside motel and turned it into a chain of boutique hotels across Kentucky. He's a man driven by ambition, always talking about building a legacy, expecting Derek and me to carry the Reed name into the family business. He measured success in contracts signed and profits earned, and he wanted us to follow his blueprint. My mother, Susan Reed, 62, was a bank manager before retiring, always standing by Dad, handling the finances with quiet precision. She rarely spoke up, her role shaped by his vision, her agreement a constant in our home. Derek was their pride and joy. He jumped into the hotel business right after high school, charming clients and closing deals with ease. When he led the opening of a new hotel in Frankfurt, Dad was over the moon. "That's my son," he'd say at family gatherings, his voice filled with admiration. Mom would nod, her smile reserved for Derek, as if he carried all their hopes. They saw him as the future of Reed Hotels, the one who'd keep their legacy alive. I had a different dream. I loved sketching clothes, creating designs that felt like pieces of my soul. When I told my parents I wanted to study fashion design in college, Dad dismissed it. "That's a fantasy, Tara," he said, his tone cutting. Mom just looked away, suggesting I choose something solid like Derek. I refused to give up. I moved to Chicago for college, spending countless nights in the design studio, stitching fabrics and refining my craft. I wanted to prove I could succeed on my own terms without their approval or the family business. But their comparisons were relentless. Every time I came home, it was the same. "Derek's making waves," Dad would say, ignoring my portfolio of designs. "You should learn from him, Tara." Mom would add, "Your brother's carrying our name. Why not do something like that?" I'd bite my lip, forcing a smile, but it stung. I felt like a stranger in my own family, my work brushed off as a childish whim. Derek was their shining star, and I was the one who didn't belong. As the years passed, Derek started pulling away. He'd skip my calls, send one-word replies, always too busy with the hotels. I thought he was just caught up in Dad's world, shouldering their expectations. I didn't see the strain in his eyes, the way he'd fidget when we talked. I was too busy fighting my own battle, pouring my heart into my boutique to prove I wasn't a failure. But those years of being compared to Derek, of feeling invisible, were slowly building a wall between us, a wall I didn't know was about to come crashing down. Looking back, I see how those moments shaped me. Every time Dad dismissed my dreams, I worked harder, staying up late to perfect my designs, driven by a need to prove myself. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape their judgment. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Dad's words echoed in my mind, pushing me to keep going even when it hurt. I didn't realize then that Derek was struggling too, hiding something under the weight of their praise. Those childhood days of hide and seek felt like a distant memory, and the gap between us was growing wider every day. After college, I poured everything into my fashion boutique, but it never seemed enough for my parents. I'd moved back to Louisville, opening a small shop called Thread and Soul in the heart of the Highlands. I focused on sustainable designs, dresses made from recycled fabrics, jackets with eco-friendly dyes. My boutique gained a loyal following, with local blogs praising my work and customers raving about the unique pieces. I'd spend long days sketching new collections, negotiating with suppliers, and hosting pop-up events. It wasn't easy, but seeing my designs come to life made every late night worth it. I thought I was building something real, something that could make them proud. Meanwhile, Derek was running Reed Hotels, the family business Dad had built from the ground up. He was their golden child, the one they trusted to carry their legacy. Dad would brag about Derek's latest deals, how he'd secured partnerships with big travel agencies. Mom would nod along, her eyes sparkling with pride, calling him the perfect heir. But what they didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Derek was in trouble. He'd been sinking money into risky cryptocurrency ventures, chasing quick profits to impress Dad. Those investments tanked, leaving the hotels with heavy losses he kept hidden. He'd stay up late, glued to his phone, checking market updates, his face tight with worry. Every time I saw my parents, the comparisons hit hard. I'd bring photos of my boutique's latest collection, hoping for a shred of approval. Dad would glance at them and say, "Nice, Tara, but Derek's closing million-dollar deals." Mom would add, "Your brother's keeping the family name strong. You could take a cue from him." Their words stung like I was still a kid chasing a silly hobby. I'd go home and throw myself into work, sketching until my hands cramped, determined to prove them wrong. I landed a feature in a local magazine, even got invited to a regional fashion expo. But when I told my parents, Dad just shrugged. "That's cute," he said. "But it's not like running a real business." The tension in our family grew thicker. I'd try to talk to Derek, hoping to reconnect, but he was always distracted. He'd check his phone mid-conversation, barely responding to my questions about his life. "I'm fine, Tara," he'd snap, brushing me off. I thought he was just busy, maybe stressed from managing the hotels. I didn't know he was drowning in his own mistakes, hiding the losses from everyone. Our dinners together felt strained, with Dad praising Derek's every move and Mom echoing his approval. I'd sit there forcing a smile, feeling like an outsider in my own family. I pushed harder at the boutique, taking on custom orders, collaborating with local artists for exclusive lines. My shop started turning a small profit, enough to hire an assistant. I was proud, but it felt hollow without my parents' support. I'd call Mom hoping to share my wins, but she'd steer the conversation back to Derek. "He's working so hard," she'd say, as if my efforts didn't count. I started avoiding family gatherings, dreading the inevitable comparisons. The distance between me and Derek grew, too. He'd stopped joking with me, stopped being the brother who'd once had my back. I missed him, but I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Looking back, I see how those years broke something in me. Every time Dad called Derek the perfect heir, it was like a knife twisting in my chest. I'd lie awake at night replaying their words, wondering why my dreams weren't enough. I doubled down, working longer hours, pushing my boutique to new heights. But no matter how many customers praised my designs or how many orders piled up, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd never measure up. Derek's secret struggles were still hidden, but the weight of our parents' expectations was crushing us both, pulling us further apart. I didn't know it then, but the truth about him was about to change everything. That Sunday started like any other family dinner, but It turned into a nightmare. I spent the morning preparing, hoping to impress my parents. I'd brought a bottle of Dad's favorite Cabernet Sauvignon, a vintage he loved, thinking it might spark a conversation about my boutique's recent success. I arrived at their Louisville home, the familiar smell of roasted chicken filling the air. We sat around the dining table, the same one we'd used for years, and for a moment everything felt normal. Dad launched into a story about a new hotel deal, his voice animated as he described meeting investors. Mom shared updates about her book club, raving about a novel they'd just discussed. I smiled, waiting for a chance to mention my latest collection. Then out of nowhere, the mood shifted. Dad set his fork down, his face hardening. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "Tara, we need to talk," he said, his tone sharp. I froze, my heart sinking. Mom looked uneasy but stayed silent as Dad opened the folder, revealing bank statements. "These show $200,000 transferred to an account in your name," he said, his eyes locked on mine. I stared at the papers, my mind racing. The numbers were clear, but they made no sense. I'd never seen that account, never touched that money. "I don't know what this is," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't mine." Dad's expression didn't soften. "Don't lie to us, Tara," he snapped. "This is serious." I looked at Derek, hoping for support, but he was staring at his plate, his face pale, his hands clenched. He didn't say a word, didn't even look up. Mom tried to step in, her voice soft. "Maybe there's a misunderstanding," she said, but Dad cut her off. "No, Susan. This is clear evidence." I felt like the room was closing in, my chest tight with shock and betrayal. How could they think I'd do this? Dad's voice grew colder. "You have 1 week to return the money, Tara, or I'm calling the police." The words hit like a punch. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Mom reached for my hand, her eyes pleading. "Just explain, Tara," she said. But her voice wavered, like she wasn't sure of me either. I pulled my hand away, tears stinging my eyes. Derek still hadn't spoken, his silence louder than any accusation. I couldn't stay there, couldn't sit with their distrust. I stood grabbing my coat, the bottle of Cabernet still unopened on the table. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring through my tears. My parents thought I'd betrayed them, and Derek, my brother, who'd once been my closest ally, hadn't said a word to defend me. The pain was raw, like a wound I couldn't close. I replayed the dinner in my mind, every word, every glance. Why hadn't Derek spoken up? What was he hiding? I didn't have answers, but one thing was clear. I had to find the truth. I couldn't let this accusation destroy me, not after everything I'd worked for. As I sat in my apartment staring at the bank statements I'd taken a photo of, I felt a fire ignite inside me. I wasn't going to let this stand. I'd spent years fighting to prove myself, building my boutique from nothing, only to be doubted at every turn. This was different. This was personal. I didn't know how that money ended up in an account with my name, but I was going to figure it out. My parents' words echoed in my head, but so did my resolve. I wasn't the failure they thought I was, and I'd prove it no matter what it took. The next morning, I headed straight to the bank, determined to clear my name. Running my own boutique meant I didn't answer to anyone, so I closed the shop for a few hours and drove downtown, my mind racing with questions from that disastrous dinner. At my usual bank, I met with a manager who reviewed my accounts. No sign of the $200,000, no strange deposits or transfers. My records were clean. A wave of relief hit me, but it didn't last. The account my parents had shown me wasn't mine, and I needed to know why it bore my name. I went to another bank, one tied to Reed Hotels' business accounts, and asked about the mysterious transfer. After some back and forth, the clerk revealed an account under Tara E. Reed. My name is Tara A. Reed. The middle initial was off, but the similarity was deliberate. Someone had created this account to point fingers at me. My heart pounded as I snapped photos of the documents, knowing I was onto something bigger than a mistake. Back at my apartment, I called Allison Carter, a sharp accountant I'd met through a boutique collaboration. She was a wizard with numbers and had a knack for spotting inconsistencies. I sent her the photos and we spent hours on the phone dissecting the records. Allison uncovered a name: Jude Hayes, a recent hire at Reed Hotels. His login had been used to access the company's financial system when the fake account was set up. An email trail showed he'd coordinated with Derek on fund transfers, though the details were vague. My stomach twisted. Could my brother really be behind this? I found Derek that night at a quiet bar in Louisville's New Lou district, nursing a drink at a corner table. His phone screen glowed, casting shadows on his tense face. I sat across from him, my pulse hammering. "We need to talk, Derek," I said, keeping my voice firm. He glanced up, irritation flickering in his eyes. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone clipped. I slid the bank statement across the table, pointing to the fake account. "This has my name on it," I said. "But it's not mine. You know why, don't you?" Derek's jaw tightened, his fingers pausing on his glass. He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back, exhaling heavily. "I screwed up," he said, his voice barely audible. He admitted he'd siphoned the money from the hotel funds chasing a cryptocurrency deal that promised big returns. It collapsed, leaving a gaping hole in the accounts. To hide his failure, he'd worked with Jude Hayes to create the fake account using a name close to mine to shift suspicion. "I didn't think they'd push it this far," he said, but his words lacked regret. I was floored. "You let Mom and Dad believe I did this?" I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. Derek met my gaze, his expression hard. "You made it easy," he said. "You're always off with your boutique, not contributing to the family business. They were bound to doubt you." His words were a slap, cutting deeper than any of Dad's accusations. This was the brother who'd once been my confidant, now blaming me for his lies. Fury surged through me. "You turned on me," I said, my hands trembling. "I trusted you, Derek." He showed no remorse, just shrugged and sipped his drink. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said. "The hotel's Dad's expectations, you're free of all that." I stood, my vision blurring with angry tears. "You're not the brother I loved?" I said, my voice breaking as I walked away. He didn't try to stop me. Back home, I sat in the dark, the weight of Derek's betrayal crushing me. The evidence Allison had helped me uncover was clear, but it couldn't erase the pain. My brother, the one I'd once looked up to, had thrown me to the wolves to save himself. I clutched the bank records, my resolve hardening. I'd clear my name, not just to prove my parents wrong, but to expose Derek's deception. The truth was mine now, but the scars of his betrayal would linger. 2 days later, I discovered something even worse about Derek. Allison Carter, my accountant friend, texted me with alarming news. A rival boutique in Louisville had launched a collection mirroring my sustainable designs, right down to the eco-friendly patterns I'd spent months crafting. My stomach dropped. Those designs were my heart and soul, shared only with trusted colleagues. Allison suspected sabotage and suggested I check my boutique's email server. Digging through my account, I found an email from Derek to the rival's owner attaching my sketches and offering them for cash to clear some debts. A follow-up message confirmed my worst fears. Derek had been drowning in online gambling losses, not just cryptocurrency failures, and sold my work to pay them off. I was devastated. After the fake account, this felt like a deeper betrayal. My brother had attacked my career, the one thing I'd built on my own. I called Allison, who jumped into action. Together, we scoured my cloud backups, uncovering deleted texts where Derek boasted to a friend about quick money from my designs. We compiled a dossier, emails, texts, even access logs showing Derek had used my boutique's system. I couldn't let this slide. I decided to confront my entire family, not just Derek, but Mom and Dad too. They needed to know the truth about their golden child. That night, I drove to my parents' house, my evidence folder clutched tightly. The living room felt suffocating as we gathered around the dining table. I didn't mince words. "Derek sold my designs to a competitor," I said, spreading out the emails and texts. He's been gambling online using my work to cover his losses. Derek's eyes widened, his face paling, but he didn't deny it. I was backed into a corner. He said, his voice flat. The hotel's dad's demands, it's crushing me. I had to do something. His excuse felt like a slap, shifting blame to our parents instead of owning his actions. Dad's face hardened. Tara, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, he said, his tone dismissive. Derek's carrying the family business. He's under pressure you wouldn't understand. Mom nodded, her expression cold. You're overreacting, Tara, she said. Your designs aren't the family legacy. Derek's trying to keep us afloat. I stared at them, my heart sinking. They were siding with him, brushing off my livelihood as trivial. My voice trembled with anger. You've always put him first, I said. I've fought for my boutique, but you ignore it. Now he's destroyed my work, and you're excusing him. The argument exploded. Derek snapped. You're too caught up in your own world, Tara. You don't know what I'm dealing with. Dad raised his voice, accusing me of tearing the family apart over something he called minor. Mom echoed him, saying I was blowing things out of proportion and should support Derek instead of attacking him. I laid out every piece of evidence, the emails, the texts, but they waved it away, insisting Derek's actions were just a mistake. My frustration boiled over. You're blind to his faults, I said, tears stinging my eyes. You've chosen him over me my entire life, and now my career's paying for it. No one yielded. Derek refused to apologize. Dad kept defending the family legacy, and Mom backed him up, dismissing my pain. I stood, my hands shaking as I grabbed my folder. I'm done begging for your respect, I said, my voice breaking. You're not my family anymore. I walked out the door, closing with a heavy thud. As I drove away, the reality hit me: our family was broken beyond repair. Derek's sabotage and my parents' favoritism had torn us apart. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew I was done fighting for their approval. 6 months later, I was living a new life, but the scars remained. I had severed all ties with my family, deleting their contacts and steering clear of their Louisville circles. My boutique became my refuge, where I channeled my energy into a new sustainable fashion line. With Allison Carter's guidance, I launched the collection, and it was a hit. Local blogs raved and customers lined up. The success felt like a quiet triumph, proof I could thrive without my family's approval. Still, the pain of their actions lingered, a reminder of the trust I'd lost. Allison shared news about Derek gathered from industry whispers. His gambling debts had spiraled, costing him his job at Reed Hotels when the board uncovered his financial mismanagement. Bankruptcy followed, leaving him isolated and penniless. His actions, siphoning funds and selling my designs, had not only ruined him, but also tarnished the family name. Dad and Mom, who had fiercely defended him, paid a heavy price too. Their blind favoritism led to their downfall. They lost both children as I refused to return, and Derek became a pariah in their eyes. The Reed legacy, once their pride, crumbled under the weight of their son's recklessness and their own refusal to see the truth. Dad and Mom withdrew from Louisville's social scene, their reputation battered by the hotel's struggles and Derek's scandals. Allison heard they avoided old friends, too proud to admit they'd backed the wrong child. Their silence toward me was deafening. They never called, never apologized. Their stubbornness cost them their daughter and their standing in the community, a consequence of choosing loyalty to Derek over fairness to me. I felt a pang of sorrow, but their refusal to own their mistakes solidified my choice to move on. Allison was my anchor, offering more than just financial expertise. She spent late nights helping me plan the boutique's expansion and lifted my spirits when the past weighed heavy. One evening over drinks, she said, "You've built something incredible, Tara. They don't define you." Her support reminded me I could forge my own path, surrounded by people who valued me. She was my chosen family, a light in the darkness left by my parents and brother. Reflecting on it all, I learned painful but vital lessons. Honesty is essential, but it can't always heal a fractured family. Derek's greed, my parents' bias, they all faced consequences for their choices. Derek lost everything while Dad and Mom lost their children and their legacy. I chose to walk away, and though it hurt, it freed me to build a life true to myself. We all answer for our actions, and sometimes that means letting go of those who refuse to change. I want to hear your stories. Have you faced family pressure or betrayal that forced you to start over? Drop your experiences in the comments. Let's share how we find strength to move forward no matter the cost. Your voice could inspire someone else to keep going.
"Welcome to our annual harvest celebration," my father announced, his voice carrying across the decorated barn at River's Edge Vineyard. "Today marks an exciting new chapter in our family's legacy. We're thrilled to announce that Andrea, fresh from completing her MBA, will be taking over as CEO." The crowd burst into applause while I sat frozen, my wine glass halfway to my lips. 6 months ago, I'd transferred my entire life savings to save this vineyard from foreclosure. Now I watched my younger sister step forward, radiant in her designer dress, having never worked a day in the fields. My name is Jessica, and I'm 35 years old. I built my investment consulting firm from scratch, growing it into a successful business without ever asking my parents for help. While Andrea was getting her MBA paid for by our parents, I was working 60-hour weeks, learning the real meaning of success. That's why when they called me crying about the bank's foreclosure notice 6 months ago, I transferred $850,000, my entire life savings, without hesitation. "We're family," they'd said. "We trust each other." With her business education and fresh perspective, my father continued, Andrea will lead River's Edge into a new era of innovation and growth. She has the perfect combination of formal education and understanding of our family's legacy. I watched Andrea bask in the congratulations, the same sister who'd spent her college years posting vineyard photo shoots rather than learning about soil composition or fermentation techniques. The same sister who couldn't tell our Cabernet from our Merlot in a blind tasting last Christmas. My mother touched my arm gently. "Jessica, honey, I hope you understand. Andrea's degree makes her the natural choice to handle the business side." I cut her off with a warm smile. "Of course, Mom. Andrea will do great." I raised my glass in a toast, keeping my voice steady despite the ice forming in my chest. "To the new CEO of River's Edge." Excusing myself, I stepped outside into the cool evening air and pulled out my phone, scrolling to a contact I hadn't expected to need. Rachel Thompson, the ruthless corporate lawyer I'd met at several wine industry events. "I need your help with a family business matter," I texted. "Are you free to meet tomorrow?" Her response came quickly. 10 a.m. at my office. Bring any documentation you have." Rachel's office overlooked downtown Dallas, the morning sun glinting off the steel and glass buildings. She sat across from me, reviewing the bank statements showing my $850,000 transfer to River's Edge Vineyard's account. "Let me get this straight," she said, looking up from the documents. "You transferred your entire life savings without any written agreement? Not even a promissory note?" "They're my family," I replied, the words tasting bitter now. When they called about the foreclosure notice, all I could think about was saving our legacy. 3 generations of winemaking, about to be lost because they'd over-leveraged the property for Andrea's MBA program and a new tasting room she insisted they needed. Rachel leaned back in her chair. "And now they've made her CEO, despite your investment saving the vineyard." She paused, then added, "Tell me about the day you transferred the money. What exactly did they promise?" I closed my eyes, remembering that desperate phone call. Dad said I'd be taken care of, that my investment would secure my place in the family business. Mom was crying, talking about how they'd make it up to me. I opened my eyes, anger rising. Instead, they're acting like my contribution was just a daughter's duty. "Did anyone witness these conversations?" "Yes," I said, sitting up straighter. Their accountant, Michael, was there when I visited to arrange the transfer. He seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation, kept suggesting we put something in writing. My parents dismissed him, saying it would insult the family trust. Rachel's eyes gleamed. Michael could be very useful. But first, we need to understand your ideal outcome. Do you want control of the vineyard? I shook my head. I want my investment back with interest. Let Andrea have her CEO title. I'll start my own vineyard with my money, one they'll have to compete with. Good, Rachel smiled, because I have a plan. Your parents' actions constitute verbal fraud. With Michael's testimony and these bank records, we can build a strong case. But instead of filing immediately, we'll send a demand letter first, one that outlines exactly how their actions could be interpreted as deliberate financial manipulation. She pulled out a notepad. We'll demand repayment of your $850,000 plus 8% annual interest within 30 days. We'll also request all financial records since your investment. I suspect we'll find some interesting decisions made after they received your money. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. And if they refuse? Then we file a lawsuit that will open their books to public scrutiny. Something tells me your sister's MBA hasn't prepared her for that kind of crisis management. The demand letter landed like a bomb at River's Edge. I was working from my apartment when Andrea called, her voice shrill with panic. A lawsuit? Are you insane? You're going to destroy everything our family has built, she screamed. Dad's having chest pains because of you. I remained calm, letting her rant. The solution is simple. Return my investment with interest. $850,000 plus 8% over 6 months. You have an MBA, Andrea. You can do the math. That money went into saving this vineyard, your heritage too. And now you want to bankrupt us to get it back? She paused, her voice turning sly. Besides, your precious lawyer should know that verbal agreements in family businesses are complicated. You can't prove anything. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Actually, I just got off the phone with Michael. Remember him? Your accountant? He's given a sworn statement about the day I made the transfer, about how he advised putting our agreement in writing, and how Dad promised me a secured place in the business. The line went silent for a moment. Then, hold on, Dad wants to talk to you. My father's voice came through, strained and angry. Jessica, what are you doing to us? After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me? I cut him off. Let's talk about that. While you paid for Andrea's education, her MBA, her car, her apartment, I built my own life. The only time I asked for anything was when you promised me a future here in exchange for saving the vineyard. We never promised you control. Andrea has the education for this. I'm not asking for control anymore, I interrupted again. I'm asking for my money back. Money you took knowing exactly what you planned to do with it. He switched tactics, his voice softening. Sweetheart, be reasonable. The vineyard doesn't have that kind of liquid capital right now. We'd have to take out another loan. Then I suggest you start talking to banks. You have 25 days left before I file the lawsuit. And Dad, every financial decision made since my investment will be scrutinized, including the new Mercedes Andrea's driving and that vacation you and Mom took to Tuscany last month. I could hear muffled conversation in the background. Then Mom came on the line. Jessica, please, she begged. Come over for dinner. We can talk about this as a family. We're not family right now, Mom. We're business associates in a dispute. Have your lawyer call Rachel with your response. I hung up, my hands shaking slightly. My phone immediately lit up with messages from relatives, ranging from angry accusations to pleas for peace. I ignored them all and opened my laptop, starting research on available vineyard properties in the next county. Soon, River's Edge would have some serious competition. The following week brought a revelation I hadn't expected. Michael, the accountant, called me for coffee, his voice tense with urgency. We met at a quiet cafe away from the vineyard, and he arrived clutching a thick folder. There's something you need to see, he said, glancing around nervously before sliding the folder across the table. I've been reviewing the books since your investment came in. The numbers, They don't add up. I opened the folder to find detailed financial records. Michael pointed to several highlighted entries. Your $850,000 didn't just save the vineyard from foreclosure. It also funded a series of personal expenses that were logged as business costs. The new Mercedes? Listed as a delivery vehicle. The Tuscany trip. Market research. Even Andrea's MBA had portions backdated as employee education expenses. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. They used my investment for all this? Michael nodded grimly. There's more. 2 weeks before they announced Andrea as CEO, they registered a new company, Rivers Edge Holdings LLC. They've been quietly transferring vineyard assets to this new entity. The original vineyard company, the one you invested in, it's being hollowed out. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't just dismissing my contribution. They were actively working to ensure I couldn't claim anything. The vineyard I'd saved would soon be an empty shell. Your lawyer needs to see this, Michael said, his voice dropping lower. But you didn't get it from me. I'm looking for a new job already. I can't be associated with this kind of financial manipulation. I reached for my phone to call Rachel, but it buzzed first with a text from Andrea. Family meeting tonight. Don't bring your lawyer. Last chance to fix this like family. I showed Michael the text. He shook his head. They must have figured out I was looking into the records. They're going to try to convince you to back down. Or threaten me to, I replied, remembering similar family meetings from childhood when Andrea had gotten into trouble. Our parents had always found a way to shift the blame, to make me the unreasonable one for not protecting my sister. I texted back. Any discussion needs to happen with lawyers present. Andrea's response was immediate. Your choice. But don't come crying when this gets ugly. I called Rachel and sent her photos of Michael's documents. Her sharp intake of breath told me everything. This is exactly what I was looking for, she said. They've committed multiple financial improprieties. We're not just talking about a civil suit anymore. This could lead to criminal charges. I don't want them in jail, I said quickly. I just want my investment back. Then we use this as leverage. I'm drafting an amended demand letter now. Instead of 30 days, they have 48 hours to either return your money with interest or face an investigation that will involve the SEC. The choice is theirs. After hanging up, I sat in the cafe long after Michael left, staring at the damning documents. Part of me felt guilty for what this could do to my family. But another part, the part that remembered every dismissal, every time they'd favored Andrea, every sacrifice I'd made to help them, felt a grim satisfaction. My phone kept buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from my parents and sister. I ignored them all and opened my laptop, pulling up the real estate listing I'd been eyeing. The Marshall Creek property, 200 acres of prime vineyard land just across the valley from River's Edge. Perfect soil composition, excellent sun exposure, and most importantly, a clear view of my family's vineyard. The amended demand letter hit harder than a hailstorm on harvest day. I was in the middle of a virtual tour of the Marshall Creek property when my father burst into my apartment, waving the letter like a white flag of surrender. Criminal charges? He wheezed, his face red. Your own family? I raised you better than this. I minimized the browser window showing Marshall Creek's south-facing slopes. Did you raise me to accept being robbed? Because that's what you did. Took my $850,000 and used it for luxury cars and Italian vacations while plotting to lock me out of the business. We never meant, he started, but I cut him off. Save it. I've seen the financial records. The new LLC, the asset transfers, everything. You didn't just betray me, you tried to make sure I couldn't fight back. I stood up, my voice steady. You have 40 hours left to return my investment with interest, or Rachel files everything with the SEC. His face went from red to pale. You'd destroy your sister's future? She just started as CEO. Andrea's future? I laughed bitterly. What about mine? I earned that money while she was posting Instagram photos from business school. Money you promised would secure my place in the family business. We can still work something out, he pleaded. Maybe Andrea could share the CEO position? A co-leadership arrangement? I shook my head. I don't want to share leadership with Andrea. I want my money back. Every penny, plus interest. Then you'll never have to worry about me competing with your precious CEO again. His eyes narrowed at the word competing. What does that mean? Just then, my phone buzzed. It was the real estate agent handling Marshall Creek. Perfect timing. I answered on speaker. Hi, Jessica, great news. The owner is very interested in your offer. They love your vision for expanding the vineyard's production. When can you meet to discuss terms? I watched my father's face crumple as realization dawned. Marshall Creek wasn't just any property. It was River's Edge's main competition back when my grandfather ran things. Their wine had consistently won more awards until the owner retired and let the vines go fallow. You wouldn't, he whispered. Wouldn't what? Start my own vineyard? Use my expertise to compete with the business that stole from me? I learned everything about winemaking from Grandpa, Dad. Everything. While Andrea was studying business cases, I was studying soil samples and weather patterns. Your grandfather would be ashamed, he said, trying one last emotional jab. No, he'd be proud. Proud I'm not letting you and Andrea destroy his legacy with your greed. I turned back to my laptop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a property to buy. Tick-tock on that 40 hours. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages from Andrea. How dare you threaten Dad like this? You're just jealous of my success. Mom's crying because of you. I blocked her number and returned to the Marshall Creek listing. The property needed work, but I could see its potential. More importantly, its premium grapes and higher elevation would let me produce wines that would directly compete with River's Edge's best sellers. My phone buzzed again. Rachel this time. They're scrambling, she reported. Just got a call from their lawyer. Looks like they're trying to secure an emergency loan. I smiled. Either way, I won. Either I got my money back or I got Marshall Creek, and River's Edge would learn what real competition felt like. With 12 hours left on the deadline, my mother showed up at my office. She carried a thick manila envelope and wore the same expression she'd used whenever playing peacemaker between Andrea and me as children. Your father's had to be sedated, she said, sinking into the chair across from my desk. His blood pressure was through the roof. Are you happy now? I kept my face neutral. What's in the envelope, Mom? She slid it across my desk. The best we can do. We've mortgaged everything we could. There's $600,000 here. That's all the bank would give us. We can pay the rest in installments. I didn't touch the envelope. That wasn't the deal. $850,000 plus interest, all of it, or Rachel files tomorrow morning. We don't have it, she snapped, her peacemaker facade cracking. Andrea's been calling every bank in Texas. No one will give us more without wanting to audit the books, and you know we can't allow that now. Because of what they'd find? I asked quietly. Like how you used my investment to pay for Andrea's MBA instead of saving the vineyard? Or how you've been hiding assets in that new LLC? Mom's face went still. How did you... I have copies of everything, Mom. Every transaction, every transfer, every fraudulent business expense. Did you really think no one would notice? She leaned forward, switching tactics. Think about what you're doing. If you file those papers, it won't just hurt us. The vineyard's reputation will be ruined. All those people who depend on us for their livelihood, the workers, the distributors, their families, you'd destroy them all just to spite your sister. Don't you dare put this on me, I said, my voice hard. You and Dad chose this path the moment you decided to steal my money. You're the ones who put everyone's jobs at risk, not me. We didn't steal, she began, but I cut her off. Let me show you something. I turned my laptop around, displaying the Marshall Creek property listing. Beautiful, isn't it? Premium soil, perfect elevation, and enough acreage to double River's Edge's production capacity. The owner accepts my offer tomorrow morning, unless I get my money back first. Mom's eyes widened as she recognized the property. You can't. That land, it would destroy us. Then I suggest you and Andrea get creative in the next 11 hours. Sell her Mercedes. Mortgage the house. Call in favors. I don't care how you do it, but I want every penny back. She stood up shakily. You've changed, Jessica. You've become hard, cruel. No, Mom, I've just stopped letting you manipulate me. The money or the lawsuit, those are your only options now. After she left, I called Rachel to update her. They tried to negotiate, I told her. Offered partial payment. Stay firm, she advised. From what I'm hearing, they're desperate. Their lawyer's been calling banks all day. Just then my email pinged. A new message from the Marshall Creek realtor. Owner eager to close. Can meet first thing tomorrow to sign papers. I smiled and wrote back confirming the meeting. Then I texted Andrea. 11 hours left. Tick-tock. Her response came immediately. You're making a huge mistake. Dad's lawyer says we can tie this up in court for years. I sent back a single photo. The view from Marshall Creek's highest point, looking down over River's Edge's main vineyard. She'd recognize it from all her Instagram photo shoots. Her response was a string of angry emojis. The clock was ticking, and I had them exactly where I wanted them. With just 2 hours until deadline, I sat in Rachel's office reviewing the final paperwork for both scenarios, the SEC filing and the Marshall Creek purchase agreement. The sun was setting over Dallas, painting the sky in shades of red that reminded me of our Cabernet. Their lawyers called 4 times in the last hour, Rachel said, checking her messages. They're scrambling. Someone named James Turner from First Regional Bank has been trying to reach you too. I sat up straighter. James Turner was Andrea's college boyfriend, the one who dumped her for being too high maintenance. He now worked as a loan officer. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Michael, the accountant. Emergency board meeting called at River's Edge. Andrea's crying in the bathroom. Your mother's threatening to expose something about your father if he doesn't fix this. It's chaos. I called James, who answered immediately. The vineyard's records show serious irregularities, he said. I can't approve their emergency loan request without a full audit. But there's another option. A bank looking to invest in family wineries. They'd require full transparency, but your parents would get more than just a loan. I texted my father. There's a solution, one that doesn't involve me or the SEC. Call James Turner at First Regional. You have 90 minutes. Andrea's response came instantly. You think some bank taking over is better than family? You're destroying Grandpa's legacy. I thought about our grandfather, about the hours he'd spent teaching me about the vines while Andrea played on her phone. His last words echoed in my mind. The grapes don't care about fancy degrees, Jessie. They care about love and hard work. 1 hour left, Rachel said quietly. What now? With 30 minutes left, Michael's updates became more frequent. Your father's reviewing documents with the bank. Andrea's called 3 different loan officers. Your mother's gone through half a box of tissues. I kept my phone close, waiting. The $850,000 wasn't just about money anymore. It was about making them face the consequences of their actions. Rachel worked quietly across from me, preparing both sets of paperwork. Then my father's number appeared on my phone. The bank wants full control of financial decisions for 5 years, he said, his voice rough. Plus 2 board seats. We'd be answering to strangers. Better strangers than thieves, I replied coldly. 20 minutes left. If we do this, if we let the bank take over, will you drop everything else? No SEC, no competing vineyard? I leaned forward. Sign with the bank, repay my investment with interest, and I'll walk away. You'll never have to worry about me competing with precious Andrea again. He was quiet for a long moment. Your mother thinks we should call your bluff. Says you won't really file with the SEC, that you're too soft. 15 minutes to find out, I said. Tick-tock. I hung up and turned to Rachel. Get the SEC paperwork ready. But before she could reach for the file, my phone buzzed with an email from James Turner. Subject line, document signed. The attached file showed my parents' signatures on the bank agreement, along with a transfer confirmation for $850,000 plus interest to my account. Looks like they chose survival over pride, Rachel said. I nodded, already pulling up the real estate agent's number. The vineyard across the valley from Marshall Creek was for sale too. Better water rights, lower price. 2 months later, I stood on my newly purchased property, Sunset Valley Vineyard, with its perfect western exposure and rich soil. The view of River's Edge across the valley was just a bonus. I'd used the returned $850,000 as a down payment, with investors eager to back my venture after hearing my plans. Michael had resigned from River's Edge the day after the bank took over, and I'd immediately hired him as my CFO. Andrea's having a meltdown, he reported, checking his phone. The bank rejected her proposal for a new tasting room, said something about unnecessary expenses and focusing on wine quality. I smiled, remembering the bank's first board meeting. They'd replaced the Mercedes with a practical truck and canceled the Italian wine tasting tours. Andrea's MBA was proving useless against actual financial oversight. My mother still sent weekly texts about healing the family, which I ignored. My father hadn't spoken to me since signing the bank agreement. But last week I'd received a package that meant more than their words ever could. Grandpa's old leather-bound notebook of vineyard wisdom, filled with his handwritten notes about soil composition, weather patterns, and grape varieties. The enclosed note read simply, "This belongs with someone who understands its value. Dad." I held that notebook now, standing among my newly purchased vines. In 3 years, these grapes would produce their first vintage. In 5 years, I'd be competing directly with River's Edge. But I didn't need their validation anymore. I had something better, my own legacy to build. Ready to start planting? Michael asked, gesturing to the work crew waiting with the new rootstock. I tucked Grandpa's notebook into my jacket. Let's make some wine.